Hello, good evening, and welcome to your most authoritative business analysis program live here on TV3. This is Business Focus live here on TV3. Now, government says the mid-year budget review, which will be delivered by Finance Minister on Monday, July 29, will, among other things, focus on augmenting government revenues to fund the outstanding coordinated programs of social and economic policies. The 2019 budget statement focuses on building a more dynamic and stronger economy by accelerating economic growth, modernizing agriculture, industrializing society, and protecting the vulnerable to create jobs and prosperity for the Ghanaian people. While the primary focus was on consolidating the gains achieved so far in restoring macroeconomic stability and building an inclusive society by rolling out a wide range of broad-based social protection policies and interventions. It's been 7 months into the year. The big question here is, have we been able to restore macroeconomic stability? Tonight, we will seek to delve deeper into how the economy has been managed. We've got a number of people here to help us do this analysis. We'll also hear from the central bank on what it makes of the management. Just last Friday, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank met to review the state of the economy. They announced a new policy rate. They've maintained the policy rate at 16%. We'll take a look at all these issues. Plus, also the Institute of Fiscal Studies has conducted an analysis of the economy. We'll seek to delve deeper into all these matters. Still ahead, we've got the Mover segment. We're also going to be doing some analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. We'll find out what the price of gold, cocoa, and oil is and what its impact on the local economies. This is Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. My name is Sparkwasi Asari. We'll take a short break. When we return, I'll introduce my guest to you. All right, so you're welcome back to your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. Now, we know the budget often gives a rough estimate of government's revenue and expenditure for the year. We heard from the central bank just last week that government missed out on its fiscal deficit target slightly, and this, we're told, is as a result of shortfalls in expected revenue and not necessarily due to over expenditure. We've also heard about our public debt ballooning to about 200 billion cedis, issues of growth. We've experienced some remarkable performance in growth over the last few years. And the big question here also is to find out where this growth is coming from. We've seen the growth largely arising out of the extractive industry. Services, and agriculture have gone down. And for services, for instance, which, largely is the oil, the engine of the economy, we know that a lot of the issues within the banking industry has affected growth within the services industry. Also, when you look at the macroeconomic indicators, inflation, exchange rates, we've seen some remarkable performance there. But of course, there's still a lot more to talk about. Tonight, let me introduce to you Anthony Morrison, the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. William Kofi Owusu Demitia is a tax consultant. Edu Owusu is a lecturer with the Institute of Fiscal Studies and also is a lecturer at the University of Ghana and also with the Institute of Fiscal Studies. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Owusu, congratulations on your PhD.
Thank you.
So you're now a doctor.
Yes, you can.
Okay, Dr. Owusu.
You can say that.
Dr. Edu Owusu, congratulations to you. I'll start off with you because I know that you work with the IFS and you've done a bit of research on the economy ahead of the mid-year budget review. Are you able to tell us what your findings revealed?
Yes, we can start from the budget which was presented in November last year. The theme for the budget was a strong economy for jobs and prosperity. And so when we are looking at a strong economy that can create jobs and prosperity for the people, we need to look at, first of all, the source of growth. And the finding was that we have two sectors, the extractive and the non-extractive sectors, because Ghana discovered oil in the commercial quantities in 2011. We found that Ghana's GDP has been forward largely by the extractive industry. And the problem with the extractive industry leading the GDP growth is that it does not employ as much as the other sectors would employ. So for instance, the extractive industry can only employ just 8%. In fact,
it's largely dominated by multinational firms.
Exactly. So that's also another question to answer. So the impact of the extractive industry on household income is almost negligible, 0.1. The impact on employment is about 8%. So the whole issue is that even though Ghana's economy is growing, last year we reached about 6.3% to 7%, and it is good news. But it is not generating the necessary employment as we expected it. And that is why I started by talking to you about the title of this year's budget, A Strong Economy for Jobs. So if you want to create an economy that can create jobs, and the sector of the economy which is driving the economic growth is the one that cannot create jobs, then there is something to look at. So on that score, GDP is growing, but I still insist that we look at the agricultural sector, which I'm not sure my man here will talk about the agri sector, is picking up, and the service sector is also picking up. But the point is that these sectors can employ more, but the extractive industry, which cannot employ, is rather the sector leading.
What has contributed to the challenge within the services industry?
The service sector, consistently from the first quarter of 2017, the banking and insurance sector has been growing negative. And it is not surprising that Bank of Ghana had to quote-unquote sanitize the banking sector. So we needed to do something about it. It has been growing negative consistently. Negative means the value is lower than the previous one. So something had to be done. And that the negative issue with the banking sector has also affected arrears payment and the non-performing loans. Because if somebody is not able to...
Contractors are not being paid?
Exactly. Contractors are not being paid. Now,
and that's what fuels the economy largely.
Yes. Capital expenditure and the arrears has been suffered. They've suffered largely due to these happenings in the financial
Essentially,
sector.
what you're saying is that government has had to hold on to capital expenditure in a bit to meet its fiscal deficit target.
Yes, that's also another issue. The fiscal deficit, as we know, now there's a cap of 5% of GDP. Now, there are ways of bridging the gap. Either you increase revenue or reduce the expenditure.
Right.
Reducing the expenditure is not an option for me. You have to increase the revenue. But government has done two things. Last year, between 2017 and 2019, government was only able to reach 94% of the target. Meaning that if you wanted to raise 100 cedis, we got only 94 cedis.
I'm going to be raising a lot more of those issues with William Kofi.
Yes.
He's a tax consultant.
So we have revenue shortfall. Not shortfall, but we couldn't meet the target.
In fact, one of the reasons the governor cited for the fiscal deficit target that we missed was largely due to shortfalls in revenue,
not shortfalls.
Expected revenue.
No, yes, shortfall in the expected
revenue, right?
The revenue is performing better than what they inherited in 2016. But the point is that when you set a high target or you set a target and you're not able to meet it, it will affect your spending.
I'll come back to you. And one of these is the luxury, the tax on luxury vehicles, for instance. The target that government set for itself and what it's realized even in the first quarter of this year has been very, very insignificant. And that's why we're hearing that there's going to be a likely review to that policy. But generally, William, why are we seeing this shortfall in expected revenue?
Well, a number of things. Number one, I think that we made certain assumptions which may not be necessarily right. If you look at government's projection from 2016, revenue was around 27 billion, tax revenue. In 2017, we raised it up a notch that we're going to get 33 billion, which was almost about 6 billion in addition. By God's grace, we were able to hit 32 billion, even though it was about 3.4% below the target. In 2018, we raised it a notch higher. We want 39 billion, an increase of 6 billion.
Are this realistic?
In 2019, we are saying we want tax revenue of 45 billion, another increase of almost 6 billion. Now, if you read paragraph 93 of the budget, there were two things that the minister said were going to fuel the growth. One, improve tax compliance, and two, reform of the revenue agency. And so the question we should ask ourselves is, what measures have we put in place? One, to improve tax compliance, and two, to reform the revenue. And are they giving us the expected results?
One of the things they said they're going to do was to increase the tax to GDP ratio. Have we seen that increase? Because we're one of the lowest in Africa.
Well, ideally, we should be doing 20% as a middle-income country. But in the projected revenue that we did in the budget, 2009, we're looking at having revenue of 17.1% of GDP. I mean, and that means that there's room for improvement. Now, the difficulty with some tax handles like the luxury vehicle levy is that we made certain assumptions which were not realistic. Let's look at the realities on the ground. You are expecting a person with a vehicle capacity of 3.0 and above to pay minimum 1,000 Ghana cedis when the person goes to renew the roadworthy certificate. The question you ask yourself is, how much does it cost me to renew the roadworthy certificate? The 1,000 Ghana cedis is about 2 or 3 times, sometimes, the cost of the renewal. If you're a rational human being, let's face reality, you'll find a way around it. And people have started gaming the system, and that is why government is not getting the revenue. So what government did was to target a higher amount on a smaller base. My recommendation, government, why don't you take a second look and target a small amount on a bigger base? So if you're looking at all capacity of vehicles and you're saying that everybody should pay 20 Ghana cedis, 50 Ghana cedis extra to bring us revenue, I think that if you're targeting 100 million Ghana cedis in revenue, you can get about 2 million vehicles, bringing you 50 Ghana cedis each, which gives you the target of 100 million, rather than a few vehicles bringing you 1,000 Ghana cedis at the minimum. And that is one of the problems we've had. For tax compliance, I think that there are things that we need to do that we are not doing. For example, we've been saying since 2015 that we're going to introduce something called the fiscal electronic device. What it simply means is that if anybody is selling an item, the expectation is that this person will use the device as a means of accounting for revenue. So in real time, the Ghana Revenue Authority is able to monitor that you made sales of so much, and this is the tax you collected by way of VAT and other taxes. And we'll find out whether month on month you are remitting the actual amount you're supposed to remit. We are not doing that.
I'll come back to William. Let me hear the thoughts of Anthony Morrison, who's Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. I'm sure you've heard agriculture's contribution to GDP. We've always expected more. How do you feel about this?
Well, thank you very much, and I think that we are in a very different situation based on some other corresponding effects from other sectors of the economy. And I think right on from 5.5, that was around 2017, and we came to a point of 4.4, 2018, and today, according to the Ghana Statistical Services, we are hovering around 2.2. For me, it's a multifaceted challenge that we are facing as a country. Also,
just by the planting for food and jobs.
Yes, just last week, there was another publication from Graphical, I think one of them, that says that despite the Planting for Food and Jobs, the performance of the industry keeps decreasing. And I think that right on from the kind of aligned agriculture policies we've seen, as we speak, we now are going to adopt the Ghana Agriculture Investment Plan when the government is in its third year. And you would have thought that effort would have been much put in place to have that done in the fourth quarter of 2017. That to make sure the government pushes all the other boundaries to make sure the targets that are being set in the agriculture sector are well achieved. Don't also forget that the agriculture is mainly affected by our financial or credit situation as a country. If you look at also all the many other flagship agriculture projects, Planting for Food and Jobs, Rearing for Food and Jobs, One Village, One Dam, movement of agriculture produce, storage of facilities. And we're also talking about the Ghana incentive-based risk-sharing system for agriculture lending. And we've seen all these programs. These are top-notch programs that most of the development partners also take part in terms of having some intervention in forms of supporting some of the areas where their programs also have an input. So you realize that, yes, these programs are very nice, but you would have expected that government would have taken its time, built enough data, and do proper projections as to introduce these probably after 2 years. So Planting for Food and Jobs and Planting for Food and Export, for instance, would have been done for 2 years to see how effective this has rolled on before bringing on all the other agriculture projects, because we have limited resources as a country, and especially in the agriculture sector. We do not even have all our budgetary allocations. So if you are going to depend on the development partners, and for instance, if you're talking about development partners, one very important one is GIZ. GIZ now is struggling to get government to sign some of the implementation agreements. Okay. Now, if you look at how all this has evolved, you realize that yes, our dependency on donors, our dependency of moving agriculture from where it is, the ecological point, to technology, where we should be making more gains, will not be realized if we keep depending too much on some strong performance of the sector.
Dr. Usagode, government's abolishment of certain taxes when it assumed power, has it come back to bite them?
Not necessarily. Government decided to abolish what they call the nuisance taxes, and I'm one of those people who agreed to government's decision to abolish those. In fact, they were a nuisance because when you tax a certain part of the economy too much, they stifle growth. The issue is about how to mobilize adequate resources domestically. There are so many areas that we can look at. And now, when we did our research, one of the findings was that even though we have the revenue not able to meet the targets, the direct taxes were better. They were able to exceed their targets rather. But the indirect taxes, largely the ones you are talking about, the import duties which were cut, the VAT on financial services, they affected the indirect taxes. But I won't use the phrase used that it has come back to bite them, because I will not support the reversal, the reimposition of those taxes. In fact, they were nuisance. It has affected them and that's what we call the J curve in economics. When you take any reform,
that's a doctor speaking.
Yes, yeah. when you do any reform, it will bite you in the short term, but you will gain much in the long term. So, what we are seeing, the indirect taxes collection, is expected, and it came with different levies, different rates. So, sectors of the economy, players in the economy had to adjust. So this short-term period is what they are using to readjust to the new levies, the new taxes, the new rates.
We're told the fiscal consolidation efforts seem to have been working. The issue about the rate of debt accumulation, we're told also is slowing down, but the debt is rising. We're seeing about 200 billion cedis from where we left off within the same period last year. I'll come back to you on that, but I've got the same question for you on the issue of nuisance taxes. You think it's come back to bite them?
Well, I think that the assumptions on which we abolished them appear to be sound. But one thing that we always say in tax is that you have to have equivalence. So you abolish, say, VAT on financial services. You scrap, introduce a flat rate VAT for some retailers and wholesalers. The question is, did we do an estimation of the revenue we're going to lose by abolishing those handles? And what were the measures we put in place to make sure that we are able to shore up to get the needed revenue to iron it out? I think that the assumption with which we proceeded was that if you abolish them, it will engender growth and that would automatically lead to an increase in revenue. We did not really make a conscious effort to replace those revenues we were losing by specific targeted tax policies. What we decided to do was
I need you to repeat that. What did you say?
What I'm simply saying is that when we abolished the tax handles, those ones we classified as nuisance taxes, yes, they weren't bringing us much revenue as we wanted, but at least it brought us some revenue. Now, what we needed to do was to put in place specific measures, specific tax policies that were going to bring us the same revenues that we lost by abolishing. That we didn't do. And so that is why last year...
You consider them populist?
Not necessarily. That's why last year in the mid-year review of the budget, you realize that government came out with new taxes because they realized in the middle of the year, hey, we are not going to meet our targets. So let's go back and introduce other things to help us. And these were specific things government realized they could do to, as it were, rake in the revenue. So any measure we take, we are supposed to have an equivalence to ensure that whatever revenue we are losing, we are taking specific measures to be able to either balance it out in new revenue handles or improve it. And that is what I believe we ought to have done. That we didn't do, and that is why we find ourselves in this.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Morrison. Edosu Sarkodie, please talk to me about the debt, the debt to GDP. Debt to GDP is going down. The rate is going down. But the debt itself is rising.
No, okay. So, in terms of value, it is going up.
Okay.
In fact, in the 4 years of the previous administration, they added about 88 billion Ghana cedis. This present administration is adding more than 88 billion in this short term. So in terms of value, it is going up.
Is that what we're seeing, the 200 billion cedis?
Yes,
right.
yes.
Okay.
It's around 200 and it's expected to go beyond that by the end of 2019.
In fact, I told you about the EIU report, which suggested that we're likely to see an over-expenditure next year for the election.
Yes. So what is happening is that in terms of value, it's going up. As a ratio of GDP,
it's going down.
Without the intervention, without the intervention in the financial sector, it will be going down.
But has that been added to it?
Yes.
Okay.
If you add it to debt, then it is rather rising. Okay. Because you've added about 9.8 billion Ghana cedis, which is not a small amount of money, to that. So if you add it together, as a ratio of GDP still is rising. Okay. If you look at the servicing of debt, when we say servicing of debt, we mean interest payments, right. Amortization. Last year we paid about 15 billion. This year we are paying about 19 billion Ghana cedis, just interest alone. And that is about 42% of the total tax revenue. So every 100 cedis tax revenue you collect, 42 cedis is
going to the payment of debt.
Yes, only the interest. Only the interest. So that is an alarming situation. I don't see why some of us spoke against the previous administration, about this borrowing, and this present administration is almost following the same footstep. We have been borrowing. We borrow from domestic. We say it's a domestic bond, but meanwhile, it is largely
a chunk of it is taken by foreigners.
It's foreign owned. Then we go to the domestic market to borrow.
I need you to repeat this. You're telling me that this present government is doing almost the same thing.
Almost the same.
We accuse the then administration,
yes,
the John
in terms of borrowing.
Of doing, in terms of borrowing.
Okay. Because in terms of value is rising, as a ratio of GDP, if you add the intervention in the financial service sector is rising. In terms of the ratio of interest payment as a ratio of tax revenue is almost the same. It's almost at the same level. And things are not getting better as we expected. And we want the government to continue to do better than what they are doing. And the issue is that we have domestic bonds which are foreign held or foreign owned. And anytime there's a problem with the exchange rate, it impacts on the external debt as well as the portion of the domestic debt which is foreign owned. There is no substitute for domestic resource mobilization. I will say this and I will say it again. There is no substitute for domestic resource mobilization. We cannot, as a country, continue to be relying on borrowing, and then when the two parties meet, is just something, somebody is saying that you borrowed more than me, and that person is saying that you borrowed more than I did. That shouldn't be the case. It should be about I reduce the public debt and I raise resources domestically more than you, and that we can finance the number of expenditures that we have in the country. Other than that, we cannot do anything. As we speak, the capital expenditure has been reduced by 28%. Roads are not being constructed as they used to. Hospitals are not being built as they used to. The infrastructure development are all not going as we expected.
Let me just read this
Yes.
data. I mean, this was during the recent MPC meeting
Yes.
by the governor of the Bank of Ghana. And just read number 13. It says provisional data for the first 5 months of 2019 showed an overall budget deficit of 3% of GDP against a target of 2.4% of GDP. This excludes some legacy energy-related payments of about 0.7% of GDP.
Yes.
The higher than projected fiscal deficit outturn was primarily driven by lower than expected revenues outturn against increased pace of spending. Now, the revenue shortfalls were mainly from international trade taxes. Over the review period, total revenue and grants amounted to 18.5 billion compared to the program. Now, in line with the above developments, the stock of public debt rose to 58.1% of GDP.
Okay.
That's 200 billion cedis at the end of May 2019, compared with 51% of GDP, that's 153.4 billion cedis at the end of May 2018. That's the same period last year.
Yes.
Now, of which 11 billion cedis represented bonds issued to support the financial sector cleanup, while external debt was 105.4 billion.
What
cedis.
is more striking is that there are some debts which have been, incurred by quasi-government agencies which are not even included in this central bank debt. For example, we have the securitization of the GET fund of about 1.2 billion. They have been asked they have the room to borrow up to $1.5 billion in the next 10 years. And all this $1.5 billion is not in the books, in the books of the budget. It's not captured. And if we capture this and we capture the ESLA bonds, we capture all those other quasi-government agencies who have the license to borrow, but they are not captured by the central government. The public debt will be ballooning more than this. This is an alarming situation, and I don't think that this government is doing better than the previous one in terms of the management of the public debt. They have a fiscal council. That's my major worry. There's a fiscal council. Now, the fiscal council's job is to ensure
just hold on for me.
Yes.
Let me bring in Anthony Morrison here. He also, I need to hear his thoughts on the issue of ballooning public sector debt. But in summary, what the governor said was that the Monetary Policy Committee observed that the pace of fiscal consolidation has slowed down, mainly reflecting gaps in revenue mobilization, while the pace of spending has increased. This could pose risk to macroeconomic stability if not addressed. The committee therefore expects that some corrective measures will be announced in the mid-year budget review. This should help address the financing gap challenges as well as manage the risk from the large unbudgeted energy sector related payments, which you mentioned, that could adversely impact foreign exchange reserves and undermine the macro stability
This
gains
is the
made
governor
so far.
speaking.
Yeah.
Not
Absolutely.
political party.
But my view on that borders on the biggest sector of the agriculture industry, which is cocoa. And I'll give you some scenario here. In 2 months, government owes just one foreign company $200 million, Cocoa Board. And if you take a local company, government owes them $20 million. So when we go for the cocoa syndicated loans, over 60% of that money goes back to the foreign players. So that scenario alone tells you our situation. 4 years back, we were not importing $56 billion CFA annually of tomatoes from Burkina Faso. We import almost 90% of all tomato production in Burkina Faso. We were not in that position. 4 years back, when you look at the increasing cost or price of maize, 50 kg from the farm gate, we're looking at 54 cedis per 50 kg. As we speak, we're buying at 85 cities, the same 50 kg. This is on the back of all the major flagship government projects in the agriculture sector. You take a look at fertilizer, and you look at all the major companies are all foreign owned. So if you look at our industry, where we pride ourselves, cocoa, where we ought to be doing very well, fertilizer, and where we ought to be moving from ecological farming to technology, all these are owned by foreigners. So I'm not preaching or anything as I sit here as a CEO of the chamber, but what I seek to correct is for government to make a deliberate policy.
But we've heard this time and again.
Strengthen.
We've heard this time and
Yes.
again. Nothing has been done about it. We need to conclude quickly, but so the governor of the Bank of Ghana is clearly stating that there are financing gaps that need to be addressed in the mid-year budget review. What do you expect?
I expect one, very clear targeted policies aimed at enforcing existing tax laws. I don't expect new taxes to be introduced. I expect that the already existing taxes in the books will enforce them. I'll give you typical examples. There's something called modified taxation for taxing small-scale businesses that are earning less than the VAT threshold of 200,000 Ghana cedis every year. They are supposed to pay tax of 3%, what we call modified taxation. Since 2015, we passed the law, we've never implemented it. My question is, why are we not doing that?
Why are we not doing it? I'm sorry, we've got to take it. Sakode, 30 seconds, you've got to wrap up.
Yes, the Ghanaian economy seems to be dominated by the foreigners in every sector. The extractive sector, you go to agri, like my brother said, you go to the service sector, the banking sector is 60% foreign owned. Almost every sector is being dominated by the foreign. Even our public debt is more than 50%.
It's dominated by foreign. Even our own debt
public debt is more than 50% foreign owned, and that has serious implications on the exchange rate. In any country that has more foreigners playing more active role in your economic development cannot have stable exchange rate.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I need an undertaking from you guys. Are you going to join me back
Yes.
when the budget review is read next week, Monday?
Yes.
Is that a surety from you guys?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Anthony.
You might take on that.
I know.
Let me push a fast.
We'll dedicate a whole
all
1
right.
hour to you guys. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Yeah, Anthony Morrison is Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. William Kofi Owusu Demitia is a tax consultant. Edu Owusu Sarkodie is a lecturer at the University of Ghana and also with the Institute of Fiscal Studies. The latest doctor in town, the man with a PhD. Thanks, gentlemen, for your time. We'll see you hopefully next week when the media budget review is read. We're going to take a short break. We'll return with the mover segment. Welcome back to your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. This is Business Focus. We'll now take you to the mover segment today, and it takes a lot of guts to stop medical school only to become a fashion designer. Well, 30-year-old Bernice tells her story of how her passion for sewing is pushing her to change the narrative with fashion design.
Stitching human parts was her dream, but Bernice is now stitching fabrics to make beautiful clothes.
Dramdo, it's an Ewe name, which means dress me. So basically that's where the name is coming from. Growing up, I love to stitch, like using thread and needle to stitch small clothes for my dolls. But then I wanted to become a medical doctor or a pharmacist. I loved science. And it was like, you have to become a seamstress. They didn't say design now, they said seamstress. I said, God forbid, can't become a seamstress in future because I loved science and no, I can't become a seamstress.
Starting Dramdo was not easy, especially when Ghanaians had developed a lot of taste for foreign products and fashion designers were already in the system.
All I had was my skills. The machine was my mother and I was using it. I didn't start with anything.
How did she sail through then?
I was waiting for people for free. So I'll call you because I know because it's for free, you will come. And if something goes wrong, you won't complain. So that's what I was doing when I was in school. And I was learning, sewing and learning. And sometimes I'll just say, okay, you buy lining, you buy a zipper, and you buy probably buttons. I'll sew for you for free. So if I sew and they like it and they come again, then I charge them.
She tells me Dramdo, which started from her backyard, is fast becoming a household name.
I designed for Face of Legon contestants. That was in 2016. No, 2017. In 2017, yeah. And also I designed for Pantine Nursing School beauty pageant, yes. And also designed for PACS Star. I also designed for Nana GMB, I think 2017. And I'm designing something for Hima. Or Hima first runner-up GMB.
Her first design was a wedding gown for her best friend. She explains that was her biggest breakthrough for her.
My first perfect gown, should I say fortunately or unfortunately, was for a friend. So I wanted it to go right. I wanted everything to be perfect. So I had to stay up, make sure I delivered, make sure it was perfect, because it was my first gown. I didn't want anything to go wrong, because someone's big day, you can't ruin it. So I made sure I delivered, and wow, the gown came out very nice. But then after that, I realized that I could have done something better. Okay, and I think the more you work on gowns and stuff like that, the more you gain more experience, and you know.
Interestingly, her friend whom she made the gown for is now converted and joins her in the trade.
I told her, Bernice, I'm getting married and I want you to do my gown. And she was like, Nana, we are going to do it. And I said, yeah, I trust you because you've been sewing for me and a whole lot. But with gown, you know, it is your first day. And it is your day that everybody will be looking at you. No matter what you put on, you, the person getting married, is the center of attraction. And she said, we are going to do it. So I should send her the picture. So I did send her the picture, and she said, don't worry, we are going to do it. So went to market to get the things that we needed for the gown. And voila, everybody was like, oh, who is the designer? Who did it for you? And I said, oh, this is even her first gown. And they were like, wow. And up to now, I still love it, because even now, I just take off the ball at the down and I use the top for something else.
Bernice has dreams of becoming a bigger brand in the future. So the choice is yours. You think you have an excuse not to pursue your dreams? What could be holding you back?
If you've started, if you've been able to start, then you can also get there. Okay. The moment you plant, sometimes you plant and animals will come and eat your plant and all that, but you have to make sure you're consistent. As I said earlier on, be consistent, don't give up, be hardworking, be good at what you do. If you have to polish up, go and polish. If you have to learn more, don't just depend on what you know. Sometimes you have to read. Now you have Google, you have to read, research, know what's trending. Some people just learn and they know how to sew up and stay, or they know how to sew this pop, and they don't know that pop is no more in existence.
The next time you think of quitting, remember 30-year-old Bernice of Dramdo Designs, who quit her medical dreams just so she can chase her passion. For TV3, Grace Hamwa Asare.
All right, that was the Mover segment here on Business Focus. You're still watching your most authoritative business and economic analysis program. Let's go now for the Entrepreneur's Corner. You're welcome back to Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program, live here on TV3. Let's now do some analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. I've been joined in the studio by Winslow Sakifiu. He's with First Bank Financial Services. He's the man on the beat. Winslow, let's start off with the stock market. How I know the financial stocks have not performed really well at the start of the year. Is it picking up now?
Yes, fortunately for us, we are seeing a situation where the financial stocks, they normally lead the market. So currently we are seeing some recoveries from financial stocks, and it looks like it will sustain the market a bit.
What does this mean?
When you look at the stocks that are making the gains, the main ones are the mid-sized banks, and they are sort of driving the change happening in the market. You know, the markets has changed. Businesses are not really taking a lot of loans now, so the smaller banks are more adaptive to the change now. They can introduce more product, they can redefine the way they do business, and it looks like going forward they would lead the market compared to the bigger banks, the likes of GCB, EcoBank, StanChart.
So we're going to see this recovery, spare on till the end of the year?
End of the year, I doubt. You know, this year investors have suffered a lot of losses. The market is still in the negative. So
there's been a lot of sell-off.
Yes. What would happen is those who are still around would want to at least recover their losses and exit the market. And then we'll see the astute investors coming in, buying very low when the prices are bottoming. But it's likely those taking profit would dampen the recovery.
It's interesting. Let's talk about the commodities market. Are we seeing some significant changes in the international market?
Crude, it depends on where you look at it from. If you look at it from the fact that you buy fuel at the pump, then it is good news. The prices are falling. But if you export crude, then it's not really good. The issue we are seeing with that is U.S. production has picked up again.
We're still seeing the U.S. Trade wars with China.
Yes, despite the trade wars, U.S. production has picked up. So there's a fear of oversupply in the market. And you know, currently U.S. is the highest producer of crude oil now.
Right.
And it looks like there will be oversupply because their Gulf
so
production
that's likely to bring the price down?
Yes, we expect the price to gradually go down.
What does it do to the influence of OPEC?
Okay, so, you know, U.S. supplies, and it's also one of the biggest demanders of crude. And if there are issues in the global economy, you know, there's Brexit, there's the confrontation with China and all that, we expected the Iran issue to boost oil prices.
Have the sanctions on Venezuela been lifted?
No, they haven't been. And we expected that to push the prices up. But it looks like the demand side too is not that strong.
No,
so
okay.
That's why we are seeing...
So we're going to see an oversupply, actually.
Yes.
And that will be good news for us here in Ghana.
It will be good for the consumers. But, you know, Ghana also exports crude.
Absolutely.
So,
for
yes,
government expected revenue.
expected revenue would
There's been a shortfall.
Yes.
Right. Right. Let's talk about cocoa and as well as gold.
Okay, so gold, when you look at the current happenings, it's sort of boosting the price of gold. You know, Brexit is the key one. And there's still uncertainty about Brexit. They are supposed to have a new prime minister coming in, and there are a lot of uncertainties around that. So it's sort of putting a lot of fears in investors. And you know, the Iran issue is still developing, and we don't know how worse it will get with time. So there's that kind of jitters with investors, and they are looking at pushing their money in gold. The prices would have gone up even higher, but because the dollar gained some grounds, it made gold a bit expensive for those who are not in the dollar zone. For cocoa, I think because Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana are looking at certain price floors, it's looking like that will prop up the market a bit. But there's talk about a cartel being formed and all that. But I think it will be good for Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, especially when it comes to commanding prices on the market.
Right.
But it's also affecting the demand side because now they can get cocoa substitute. And I think most of the companies in the West have been pushing for that. But
we've seen some relative stability within the exchange rate market. Is this likely to continue, or are we going to have the perennial, you know, sort of flip-flop within the exchange rate?
Perennial, I think around September, when people start putting their orders for the Christmas, we'll see the currency strain a bit. But so far, it's been fairly stable. And we expect that that stability would go on, especially when BOG has given the indication that they would support when the need arises. So it's sort of giving some comfort to businesses that use the dollar in doing their transactions.
Well, maybe very finally, Winslow, before you go, so we're going to see the Finance Minister read the media budget review on Monday. What are your own expectations ahead of that?
I think the main issue would have to do with the taxes. There's been some shortfall in the taxes.
Absolutely.
There's been revenue shortfalls. So I'm hoping to see how the government would
recover from that?
Yes. Try to make some changes to either the expectations or try to mop up the money on the market.
Thanks very much. Winslow Sakifio is with First Bank Financial Services. He's a man on the beat when it comes to analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. Thank you very much for watching. This has been your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. This is Business Focus. Hopefully next week we'll be here again with Time with the Captains, and then I'm sure we'll do some analysis also later on the media budget review by the Finance Minister. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully, we'll see you same time next week. My name is Parkus Yasari. Stand by for News 360. Thanks to the production team led by Etonam.